And we are live with only one blah. I did it 2 weeks in a row, guys. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Not me. Not me. Okay, we are live here today for our Saturday stream on the World Animal Channel, and we are going to be talking fairy tale retellings, a topic that is very, very near and dear to my heart. I have written a bunch of fairy tale retellings myself, and we're going to be talking with the amazing Christopher Clark, ECC Books on the Discord, about fairy tale retellings. He's got a Kickstarter going right now for his amazing comic book that is based on the Blood of Seven Queens, and we're just going to be geeking out about all things fairy tales during the stream today. So hope you guys are as psyched about it as I am. So I'm going to bring up Chris, and I will be introducing him as, like, he is far too modest to introduce himself. Christopher Clark has been an indie publisher since age 14, first with the help of his father's office photocopier and later with the aid of print-on-demand technology. His current project is a comic book series, The Blood of Seven Queens, a fairy tale mashup which asks the question, what if Little Red Riding Hood grew up to be the Queen of Hearts? The author of the Stains of Time suburban fantasy series and numerous short story collections, Clark is a graduate of Lesley University's MFA in creative writing program, and he lives in Massachusetts with his wife and daughters. So welcome, ECC Books.
Welcome. Thank you.
I'm
very glad to be here. What's that?
I have to do my Kermit flail.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was not where I'm so excited to be here that I needed to go put on my my swag. Oh, I'm backwards. But
well, let's go over the week, so that's fine.
Yeah, no, this is it is also a topic near and dear to my heart. I just like fairy tales, and I like twists on them as well. And I'm excited.
Cool. So I'm gonna jump into it really quickly and get started. Jump right into the questions here with why. Why use fairy tales as the bones of your story? Like, what is it about fairy tales that makes them a good starting point for a new story?
So when I haven't been in the classroom in a couple of years, but I was a longtime creative writing teacher, and the one of the things I told my students all the time was that in fairy tales you have this rule of three, and this is just one example, right? So and in nursery rhymes and things like that, something happens, and then something happens slightly different the next time, and we just as human beings like that structure. So it's too hot, it's too cold, it's just right. Or Goldilocks is probably the best example of that. But also just in general, like, I find, especially in a month where where Adventure April, or you're starting from scratch, that having a proven story structure to work with can be a way away from that blank screen or that blank page.
Yeah, it's a really good starting point because it gives it to your point, it gives you a lot of a basic structure to go that kind of follows that sort of a simplified version of that 3-act structure. I took a screenwriting class a couple of years ago, and we had to write a script for a Sundance Festival short film, a Oscar submitted short film, and then a full feature-length film. And the Oscar submittal one all had to be based on a fairy tale, but the rule was we couldn't use anything Disney had done. We had to, like, pull a fairy tale that was less well known. So the Sundance one had to be in the structure of a joke, which that's neither here nor there, but in case you were wondering.
Well, I'm what I always love things like that, because I think that constraints are super helpful. Back in my classroom back in the day, for each student would submit 3 stories over the course of the semester, and we as a group for the 3rd story would come up with an optional challenge for them for their 3rd story, based on what they'd submitted so far and where we thought they had opportunity to grow. sometimes the challenges were a little bit too crazy, but mostly like I like that a Sundance with in the form of a joke. If you don't mind me asking, what fairy tale did you pick for your Oscar-winning short?
Oh, the Oscar-winning short I picked was Donkey Skin, which is kind of a challenging one to pull off.
Yeah,
And it was also loosely based on the song Fast Car by Tracy Chapman. Like I somehow merged those two together
yeah,
into a short film script about a girl who steals her dad's Mustang, his classic Mustang, to kind
yeah.
of start a new life after abuse. And so, yeah. So it's Donkey Skin, which is, like I said, one of the more challenging ones to adapt. But
I
yeah,
dig it. I also a super big fan of Fast Car. Like I listened to Fast Car so much during my like teens and 20s, and maybe it was a very long time before I probably knew it was Tracy Chapman, but kept forgetting it was Tracy Chapman. So I'd like hear it on the radio. Radio, that was a thing. And I'd be like, I love this song, and then always forget who it was. And then finally, somewhere in my 30s, I think it's like, oh, it's Tracy Chapman.
it got a resurgence a couple of years ago when the country artist Luke Combs brought it back, and I love that
Yeah,
he didn't change a single lyric. He just kept it exactly as it was. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
I loved that he going off on the dangers of people with ADHD. That he went and brought her back. Like she's famously pretty shy about performing, right? And
yes,
that he was able to get her to come on the Grammys and sort of, as the kids say, get her flowers. The kids still say
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Maybe the previous kids said that.
I think the millennials said that, but they're not kids anymore.
Yeah.
I
Oh
keep
well.
wanting to call them kids because I'm Gen Xer and I speak of them as kids, but my kids are Gen Z and they're all adults. So, okay, cool. So we've established that fairy tales make a good bone. They give you good structural basis for your story. So, and we kind of have hinted on this, but let's go into the next question. What are the pros and cons versus retelling popular versus obscure fairy tales? Because like you
Mm,
want the recognition that kind of,
yeah.
like one of the reasons to use fairy tales retelling is that everybody's familiar with them. So you
Right.
kind of have an automatic in. They're like the ultimate IP, reusable IP that you can
Yeah.
kind of attach your brand to or whatever. So what is the, but they also have you kind of run the risk of overexposure and competition with other people who have retold that same exact fairy tale a
Yeah.
hundred times. So like what do you feel like are the pros and cons of retelling a popular versus a more obscure fairy tale, and which do you lean towards more?
That's a really good question. So I think I'm probably uh in classic non-committal Chris way. I kind of go both ways. That came out wrong. I will sort of go in either direction. Um, I think it's fun to find the obscure ones. And I think the fun about the obscure ones is that you still might find that the audience has a familiarity, whether it's with the structure or like they heard it once amongst all the other fairy tales that their parent like. My kids had a couple of different fairy tale books, right? And it had all the popular ones, and then mixed in there were a couple of the more obscure ones. So we've read through the book cover to cover at some point. Uh, so they probably are aware of some of the more obscure ones, but certainly it was the ones they were familiar with from Disney or other things that we probably read multiple times. But still in the back of their mind, they're like, I know Iron Hans. And I bring up Iron Hans because it was I back when I was teaching, I don't know that I knew Iron Hans at all. Um, and it popped up in this book that I was teaching to my English composition students, a sort of passage from somebody's version of Iron Hans about draining a pool and finding a big hairy man at the bottom of it. And it was about like some other like the essay was about probably masculinity or something like that, and like probably made some dumb point about there being a big hairy man buried in the inner core of all of us. At any rate, I became familiar with that, and then um, a few years later got asked to write and perform a piece at a evening of fairytale retellings, and I was like, well, everyone's going to do the popular ones. Like, what about Iron Hans? What is that? Where would that fit in? And so I did a retelling of Iron Hans that, when I look back, is it's called Iron Gretel. It's probably um, the earliest iteration of the story that I'm telling in my comic.
Oh,
And it sort of came about because I was like, oh, let's find something obscure. Um, but I brought into it, this is me, trying to have it both ways. I had it cross over with Hansel and Gretel. It's not necessarily. I don't think that is anybody's intent. There's a Hans, and I was like, um, uh, so yeah, it's I do try to have it both ways, but
yeah, that's I think there are a lot of obscure fairy tales or not Disneyfied fairy tales that deserve more attention. And also, we're always one Disney movie away from an obscure one becoming a
yes.
really wildly popular one. My first published work was a retelling of the Snow Queen, which
Mm,
at that time was a pretty obscure fairy tale. Like, weren't very many people familiar with the Snow Queen. And like
yeah.
6 months after that book came out, Frozen. I was
Yep.
like, okay,
Yeah.
no longer an obscure one. Of course, Frozen is very, very loosely, like incredibly loosely based on the Snow
Yeah.
Queen.
I think
Um,
they spent, if I remember correctly from my Frozen lore, because my kids were just at absolutely the right age to like just devour Frozen. Um, that they were trying to crack that story for decades. Like, I think that story might have even been one that Walt Disney, when he was alive, was trying to do, and they just couldn't figure out uh, how to make it, or how to make it the Disney, or however you want to look at it. Um, I yeah, I keep waiting for and maybe they'll never do it because Shrek did it. Rumpelstiltskin. Um,
oh,
because when I was putting together my comic, and I rattle off the list of the seven queens, I would always have to explain that one of them was like the miller's daughter
yeah, yeah,
from Rumpelstiltskin, and then people would get it. All the other ones they just sort of got on, um, just like, okay,
yeah.
here's your Sleeping Beauty, and here's your Rapunzel, and so on and so forth. But that one would be interesting. I don't know.
I've seen some of the original art, some of the original concept art for Frozen when they were trying to when they
Mm,
were in that lengthy process of trying to like crack the story or whatever. And
yeah.
the original version of Elsa was this sort of like Bette Midler, like vampy, evil, like borderline Ursula character or whatever. And
Okay.
like on the one hand, I actually really enjoyed the movie that we got, even though it's very pretty far afield
Yeah.
from the setting. But I also, some part of me in my heart of hearts would love to have seen that version of the story.
Yeah.
So we're just like where Let It Go was just
Yes. Yeah. There's some
much
alternate
more
universe.
extra, much more diva in that
Yes.
particular performance.
And you know that Idina Menzel could do it
Oh,
too, which is
100%. Yeah, absolutely. She's built for that.
yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Um yeah, no, that would be a really interesting one.
yeah.
I I've got the my sort of Ice Queen in the background, possibly for a future issue, we'll see. But certainly haven't. I think probably because Frozen got so big and has been so big, I
Yeah.
I feel like I've got an original take on it, and maybe this goes to the cons of doing popular characters. Like I feel like I've got my take on it, but it's not quite there yet. Like I don't. It's is it different enough?
Yeah,
And certainly
that's what.
yeah, those are the cons of the popular ones. I
Yeah,
know.
you go too close, and suddenly you're in a copyright infringement
Yeah,
lawsuit.
yeah. So you
The
have to be
world's largest media company.
you have to be wary of copyright infringement. You also like am I hold on, I'm putting a pin in that. This is a therapy strategy. When I'm in therapy, I'm like, hold on. Amy is the name of my therapist, but Amy, hold on. I'm putting a pin in that.
We need a post-it
But
note for that. There you go.
yeah, something about ruby slippers. But I don't even have to say anymore. People understand.
Oh yes, 100%. The ruby slippers versus the silver slippers. Of
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
But the other place where it's not necessarily, I mean, it is copyright infringement, but folks probably that I'm thinking of don't have lawyers as like Disney has. Is if you sort of go on Kickstarter at any given time, there are like two or three other at least two or three other fairy tale retelling comic books happening at any given time. Um, and I have sort of uh, shied away sometimes from things I would otherwise really like to read because I'm afraid I'm going to absorb like
yeah,
what's their idea. There's one by Cat not this cat, but there's a cat Calamia or Calamia, and her husband have one called. And I don't know how they get away with it. Well, I guess the Little Mermaid and the Pirate Queen. And their Little Mermaid is like very close to Ariel. Like I feel like their skirt, like she's got red hair, but it's a sort of sapphic fairy tale universe. So the Little Mermaid and the Pirate Queen are sort of love interests. Um, and I won't say anything else. But yeah, so like that's there, and so I find myself going, all right, I kind of know what my version of the Little Mermaid is. When I get there, I gotta hope that it doesn't sort of conflict with what they're doing. I don't think it will. I think it's different enough.
yeah.
And but to the sort of point about the ruby slippers uh, or other things, I think it's really important for yourself if what you are familiar with is the Disney versions, and no shame at that. I'm a Disney fan. Don't shoot me. Uh, you need to get familiar with the original material, right? And we mentioned the ruby slippers versus the silver shoes. That's a Wizard of Oz thing where the ruby slippers were an invention of the filmmakers for the 1939 movie, whereas they were silver shoes in the original book.
They wanted to
So
show
you,
off the Technicolor, the technology. So and
yeah,
silver just wasn't cut.
so you're safe to use silver shoes, and maybe in a few years when the copyright runs out, you'll be safe to use ruby slippers. But you'd have to be really careful in the same way that, yeah, the earliest version of Mickey Mouse is out of copyright. But um, so yeah, it helps to be familiar with the original tales. And in fact, without going too far into it, that's where I found my spin on The Little Mermaid. Was I went back to the original tale, I thought more about it, um, and I
Hans
thought,
Christian
oh
Andersen.
yeah, like this could be a really interesting way uh, to do it without her dying in the end, and ascending to heaven, or like
Turning into sea foam, yeah.
yeah.
That seems like a bummer of an ending.
Yeah. I mean, I get it.
Oh,
I think it's meant to be like she is able to ascend and go to heaven and or something
yeah,
like that. It's like there's a meaning, but it's not like I want to stay true to it kind of and not have her die and go to heaven.
yeah. That's fair. Um, I will say I'm going to put my one plug in for my current favorite obscure fairy tale that hasn't been Disneyfied
Mm.
yet, which is The Wild Swans. And there are very different, and to your point, there are lots of different versions of that. It's like, it's kind of more identifiable by like the Arn Thompson index of it, because there are
Hmm.
so many different versions of like, there's a girl and she has brothers and they all got turned into birds of some sort of
Yeah.
various numbers. And yeah, like sometimes it's 7 and sometimes it's 12 and sometimes they're
Yeah.
ravens and sometimes they're swans and things like that. But yeah,
Um,
you,
One of my old grad school mentors, David Elliott, has a retelling of that in um, as a he was doing this whole series of not like middle grade, no, like young adult novels in verse based on certain things, and he has one called The Seventh Raven, which is his version of that. I heard him read a little bit from it, and it's pretty good. He did another one on Joan of Arc and another one on the Minotaur in the same sort of style, um, and but yeah, so that's where I had forgotten about that one. Like, or like maybe I knew it at some point, and then I heard David read from it, and I was like, oh,
it
that's kind of neat.
it has a nice commonality with the Snow Queen in that it's one of the few traditional tales where the female main character has the most agency and
Hmm.
is the most heroic, because like in the original Snow Queen retelling, it's the girl that she rescues him 100%. He gets kidnapped and she rescues him.
Yeah,
And then in the Wild Swans, it's the sister who's like the one who has the power to like save everybody. So
right.
that's kind of probably why I'm more drawn to those particular ones. And it took them the longest time in the Arn Thompson index, which, if I keep bringing that up, it's basically this massive Wikipedia index of all of the different kinds of stories by
Yeah.
like templates almost.
Hmm.
Because different cultures in different countries had different versions of essentially the same story.
Yeah.
And it took them the longest time in that index to make the official name of it about the sister and not about the brothers, who are like
Mm,
inanimate or nonverbal birds for like the bulk of the story.
right.
So
I didn't realize
um,
that. Yeah. Are there different editions of that? So like the earliest
yeah,
editions had the brothers. It was and
yeah,
okay,
it's
yeah.
kind of like the DSMV, except for instead of mental illnesses, it's fairy tales. And like, yeah,
Right.
they put out a new edition every so often. I think there's a third name on it now and I can't remember what it is, but yeah, they do
Yeah.
put out a new edition of it every so often. So
Nice.
but yeah, so I think we're ready to move on to another question.
I think so. Yeah.
We beat this one to death. Okay, cool. So what are the pitfalls of retelling fairy tales?
Well, we touched on it a little bit. Certainly you have to work with the fact that people are very familiar with these, and that they're going to have their own expectations. Um, and if they're not used to retellings, they they it's possible to be like, that's wrong. That's not how Snow White goes, or that's not how, whatever goes. Um, and For me, like at least on Kickstarter, like there's definitely it is a very saturated market at times. Like it
Yes,
there
100%.
because of all of the pros we've mentioned, a lot of people try it and a lot of people sort of put it out there. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of competition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you see it applied to across multiple different genres. You've got like the horror versions of horror retellings of classic fairy tales, and you've got the romance and erotic romance retellings of classic fairy tales, and then you've got
Yeah.
pure fantasy, and then science fiction. You've got like the oh shoot, Cinder, and I can't remember the author's name.
Oh,
Darn
like, yeah,
it,
I can't.
Marissa Meyer, that
That
did
sounds
the
right. Yeah.
sci-fi versions of the fairy tale. So yeah, it's like even across all genres. Um, People, yeah, it is very competitive.
Yeah. Um, but I'm trying to think of other pitfalls besides I think there's a danger in not putting your own spin on it. What I would say to my students back in the day was, the thing I want out of your stories is you. Like I whether you buy into like every story has already been told a million times or not. Um, I, I would sort of say, well, if we believe that, then what's the differentiating factor? It's you. It's your story. So if you're telling a version of Snow White just because, and you don't have your own spin on it, then it it's like, well, what is the reason for me to like there's like a higher bar, right? Like if you're telling a straight up retelling of Snow White with nothing changed, then why am I coming to your prose or your comic or your film? What is it doing differently? It better just be amazing if there's nothing different about it, like amazingly executed. Um,
Yeah.
Instead, like, you know, put your own spin on it and have this I've only hinted at this in World Anvil articles, but like what if Snow White was involved in a relationship with the dwarves? Like what if that, what if that was, and we don't need to go down like fully to the like erotica realm of it, but like like what if, what if it wasn't just like they were really old men, like with beards and snappy nicknames. It's like what if? It's my favorite kind of question.
Oh yeah, and I think there's two different directions you can go with, you know, um, putting a different spin on these fairy tales. You can either, to the point that you made earlier, go back to the source, try to go for a more authentic, more you know, uh, more darker, more. And this is something that I think. Hang on, I'm going to throw this up here. This question from Secondhand
Mm,
Samurai. You can go that more dark, original. Let's get back to the old school, or you can subvert it. You can modernize it. You can flip it on its head. So like
yeah,
the either direction you go, the only bad path is to just like, nope, I'm just redoing exactly what was done before, but in my
yeah,
own words. So
yeah.
yeah.
I'm looking at all of Secondhand's question. How do you decide which one? Um, yeah.
Okay.
I think I already kind of said it, but it's like, what interests you? Like, you know what I mean? If you like, I um I remember when I realized because for a little while in my sort of evolving understanding of fairy tales, right? Like, so as a kid, I saw Cinderella, right? I saw the Disney version. I didn't pay any attention to the credits, and this is what would educate me later. And then so at some point, you hear about, oh, well, in the original there was, they were sawing off their feet and things like this, right? Um, and only later did I realize, well, yes, there was the Grimm brothers version of it, and then there was the Charles Perrault version of it. And if you go and you look at um, the credits of the Disney movie, they're adapting the Charles Perrault version of it, right? So, like, yes, they probably still Disneyfied it to a certain extent, but the Charles Perrault version, I don't think has the grimness of the cutting off the feet and what have you. So
Yeah,
that,
I think a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of the fact that fairy tales were Bowdlerized. That's your vocabulary word for the day, guys.
yeah,
Bowdlerized. Long before Disney got a hold of them, there were versions of
yeah,
fairy tales that were toned down, family friendly. Less less violent, less sexual content, whatever.
yeah,
From the original oral sources, went to the Grimm brothers and a couple of other folklorists who captured them as best they could in close to the original oral tradition form. And then you've got things like Andrew Lang or I can't remember her name, but Boldler, and to a certain extent Charles Perrault, who are kind of standing off the edges
right,
of some of
yeah,
these
yeah,
tales to make them a little more palatable
yeah,
to their audience. Because you're always talking to an audience, you're always talking, and that's another thing to respond to Secondhand's question is you have to think about, to your point, what you find interesting, what you find fascinating, and what like gets its teeth in you from these fairy tales. But you also, as a creator who's also a business person, you have to think about like your audience. Who are you writing to? Who is the person that who's your first reader, your ideal
right,
reader? What do they care about? What's the level that's going to hit them at the right place? So
yeah.
um But that was a really good question, secondhand. I appreciate it. Kind of got a little bit deeper on the pitfalls.
Yeah.
Because they can get really, really dark. Like some of the
Yeah.
older versions of Sleeping Beauty are quite dark.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that kind of goes for all of them.
Yeah.
Even the ones that you think are the most silly and lighthearted.
Yeah.
There, it's it's interesting that those brothers' names was Grimm.
Yes.
Like that's
Yes,
an
it is.
interesting piece of serendipity, isn't it? Just a
Yeah.
couple of German brothers named Grimm who just decided. Okay, so this is second last question. We got some time. I'm checking the time, make sure because we can ADHD guys. I
Yeah.
think Chris and I could probably like ramble about fairy tales
I think we're
literally
doing pretty good. Like
for the entire day. But we won't do that to you. So, and we've kind of touched on this question a little bit, and I think secondhand's question also kind of touched on this. So, just how much can you change when you're adapting a fairy tale before it's like no longer recognizable?
Yeah.
So,
That's I've been thinking about this one. And well, so the first example that comes to mind is not a fairy tale, but it is sort of folklore or an adaptation, and that is around the time that the movie "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" was out. Somebody said to me. We were talking about the Odyssey, and somebody said to me, "Well, you know what movie is out that's an adaptation of the Odyssey?" And I felt really dumb. I was like, "I don't." um, and and I think I had seen "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," but I just hadn't quite put it together.
yeah,
And I
I think
hadn't
the
seen the
sirens are maybe the most recognizable element
yeah,
that you're like, oh yeah, I got that. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of other certainly like the most famous sort of adapted one is Cinderella. I don't know that you can get that to the point of it being unrecognizable. I think the point is that it is recognizable, right?
Yeah.
The
Well, and to your
yeah.
point, like certain stories, I think really are archetypal and go even further back than what we typically think of as the fairy tale. Beauty and the Beast, in my opinion, is already a retelling of Psyche and Eros. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is a
Yeah.
much, much older story than even the oldest version that we think of as a fairy tale. And some of these
Yeah.
sorts, to your point, like Cinderella, are so I think some version of that story has probably been told since people have been telling stories.
Yeah,
So
probably. Um and I guess thinking about the question is thinking as a writer, like I'm like, well, is it okay if it becomes unrecognizable, right? Like maybe that's if that's what you're going for, maybe that's the point, right? I feel like I'm not answering this question, but hopefully this answer will be helpful. I was writing this book. I almost said The Blood of Seven Queens. No, that's the current book. The comic book. Seven. I like the number seven. Also, fairy tale writers like the number seven.
living in
But
three.
I was writing The Seven Wives of Silver. I was like, like, what the heck was it called? So in that book, which I don't necessarily, I'm proud of it, but I don't necessarily recommend it. Certainly not a fairy tales your thing. It is more on the grim slash grimdark side of things. But I was trying to write about these seven wives, and I was running out of story templates. Um, and I knew that the one of the main characters was supposed to be a Shakespeare buff in the and I thought, okay, what if I sort of these were supposed to be pulpy stories. It was just like, what if I just took elements of like whatever random Shakespeare story I think of on the day I'm going to start Shakespeare play on the day I'm going to start writing, and I'll just sort of like use that as a jumping off point. So I don't think any of the stories as they were finished are recognizable as having Shakespearean roots, but they were those like elements oh gosh, which one is it where Falstaff is it Falstaff that's in the basket? Or like there's a character who's put into a basket by a couple of women, and I forget what happens with the basket. This shows you how well read I am on my Shakespeare. Um, at any rate, like I liked that image, and I think the only part of that that's in the story is sort of like that's one scene or one part of one scene in a play that's probably like 3 or 4 hours long, but it was enough to get me going because I just liked the image uh of the basket. I think they were trying to hide the guy
Oh yeah.
from somebody. It was probably like a opening and closing doors thing, and they're like, oh, we have to hide him, and they put him in a basket.
There's
um
there's a lot of that kind of like those kind of weird like people who don't haven't watched or read a lot of Shakespeare don't know how many like zany hijinks
yes. Yeah,
and dirty jokes
they think
Shakespeare
it's
is
all
full of.
incomprehensible language, but like no, there's like there's funny, weird stuff in there, and a bit with
While
a
we're
dog.
while we're on the topic of retellings, this is not a fairy tale retelling, but I recently had someone bring out the idea that Pride and Prejudice is a Much Ado About Nothing retelling, and I'm like,
Okay.
what? And
Interesting.
suddenly I could see it. I was like, Darcy is Benedict and Lizzie is Bee. Oh my God, you're right. Oh
Yeah.
my God. So yeah, I people have been doing retellings like
Yeah.
forever, always, and I love that is probably my favorite Shakespeare play, and
Hmm.
definitely like my second favorite Jane Austen. And I never put those two together.
Yeah.
Like
No.
yeah. Okay, we have another question from secondhand that I think is worth pondering.
Mm.
Which is if you're picking up the fairy tale sword, should you always pick up, and I'm not going to say this correctly, a Sakata bat and make sure you have the moral of the story in mind when writing? So,
Oh, interesting.
is
Um, what do you
because
think?
morals are all like they were moral tales to begin with,
Hmm.
to a certain extent. Like they were teaching tools
Yeah.
about life and things like that. So they had that was a big part of their original purpose. I I think you need a theme or else it's weightless.
Mm.
I don't think that theme necessarily needs to have moral weight.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I would agree.
I don't need it to be prescriptive. You must do this. Just maybe
Yeah.
think about this.
I mean, yeah, yeah. I think yes, theme, and that because that's going to help you figure out how your version is different than the rest. But a moral, unless it really helps you get through the writing of the story, my biggest thing is if it helps you get through the writing of the first draft, go for it. Like if you're like, because the writing of the first draft is so hard, like and revision is also very hard, but the writing of the first draft is so hard, like anything that gets you through that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're down to our final question.
Mm.
Which means if you have any questions in the comments, please throw me some questions in the comments. But the question we have right now, which probably could take us out like too easily to like late in the game here, is what are your favorite retellings from pop culture, like books, TVs, movies, video games, etc. And please feel free to drop them in the chat, guys. Like we want to hear from you guys. We want to hear what your favorite fairy tale retellings are. I really, if there's any Once Upon a Time super fans out there who are still like, hanging on for dear life to that TV show, like let's
Yeah.
hear it, guys.
Yeah, I want to hear what other people have to say as well. Secondhand mentioned Fables. I really like Fables. And I did watch. I, I didn't watch all of Once Upon a Time, but it was one of those things where like all of my family watched it. My wife, my kids, my mom, and whenever I could like still myself for a few minutes from like a project or whatever, I would sit down and watch it. So like I know the big overarching bits
Yeah.
of that. Um, I when I was writing up uh the description for the Kickstarter, this may sound like um a non-traditional one, but I'm okay with that. One one of my favorite more recent retellings, sort of, is the bits with the Disney princesses in the movie Ralph Breaks the Internet.
Oh, right,
Um,
right.
and the reason I like it is it's very self-aware. Like they're like
Very meta. Yeah.
there's yeah, the bit where they're like so if you haven't seen it, there's a video game character, Vanellope von Schweetz, who is technically a princess, and she accidentally teleports herself into this room full of Disney princesses, um, all voiced by as much as possible by the original actors. And if it was a we're in the case of like Snow White, where the original actor isn't alive anymore, it's whoever has been doing that. So it feels very like, whoa, this is a crossover I never expected to get to see. So they all are like, who the heck is this? When she pops in there, um, I love that Cinderella takes off her glass slipper, smashes it, and turns into a shiv, and like she's holding it towards Vanellope. So they start interrogating her, and they ask her all of these questions. Um, Eventually, which leads to, and I'm going to get the rhythm of this messed up, but um, uh, her saying, I don't even have a mom. And then like three or four of them like crowd in and go, neither do we. Like it's just and so yes, it's very self-aware. In the end, they have a sort of superhero team up, with where they all get to like probably like half a second to shine, where they're rescuing somebody using their magical fairy tale powers. It's so brilliant. I will sometimes the movie's okay. The movie's all right. I will sometimes go onto YouTube and watch the two scenes with the Disney princesses in them, because it's just it's this like 10-minute short film spread
In
out
the middle of
across.
the bigger film. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Yeah. And I think somewhere in the back of my mind there, I don't know if I was already working on this idea or not, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I was like, that's brilliant. Like I want to see what happens when fairy tale princesses team up.
Yeah, you get your fairy tale Avengers. Who's like I think since 2012, everybody is continually looking for that Avengers moment where the
Yeah.
camera does the 360 around them and they all just
Yep.
like do their and then you get the solo shots of them all doing their thing. Like that's like it scratches like an itch that exists in
Yeah.
your brain,
It
and
does.
that itch will never go away now. But yeah, I think yeah, that's a really good one. My favorite book of all time is Sunshine by Robin McKinley, which is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's also a
Mm.
vampire romance, sort of. But it's not a very romantic vampire romance. Technically, I think it fits.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and I Andy brought up Fables. I got introduced to Fables because I collect comics through actually through the video game, through A Wolf Among
Mm.
Us, which was the Telltale version of adaptation of it.
Yeah.
And to your point from earlier about mixing and having it both ways as far as the more popular and more obscure, that's really how you can do that really well. Is it
Yeah.
had such a Fables had such a huge cast that like they could bring a character like the one with the ribbon around her neck that I can't remember her name of right now. Like
Yeah.
that's a pretty obscure character, but they brought her really into the forefront
Yeah.
uh, in that game and also in the comics, the original comics that it was based on.
Yeah.
So the bigger your cast is, I guess, the more you can work those in there. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, the way that they were able to work, although I don't think the original intent was for Snow White, and the one with the seven dwarves, and for Snow White and Rose Red to ever act. I don't think they were meant to be the same characters. In Fables, they were like, they took that, they were like, okay, well, let's do this. Let's
yeah,
my I remember when that comic came out, the way that my local comic book shop guy sold me on it was he said, you know, Prince Charming, well, it's the same Prince Charming in every story. And I was like, oh, like, so how does that, like, so he's been married and divorced quite a few times. And he, you know, he's as like, okay, I'm in. And of course, Big B Wolf
Yeah,
uh is really interesting for me. It was like, oh, how do you tell that story? And that sort of is what I've been working on recently, was like, okay, well, I know how I think Bill Willingham is the author. Um you know, I know how he did it, right? And I don't want to do the same thing. So
a hard-boiled detective version of Big Bad Wolf.
yeah, and he's his dad is the North Wind, right? Like that's why he can
Oh yeah,
blow houses down. Like, so I was really afraid to go back to it because I was like, I don't want to accidentally absorb things. But I said it's worth the risk. Like, let me see what he did and make sure that I'm not doing the same thing. Certainly it's kind of unavoidable because, you know, like, I don't think it's that original an idea for the big bad wolf from um Red Riding Hood to also be the big bad wolf from the Three Little Pigs. Like, it's I'm hoping I don't get sued on that you know, on that, in that regard. But
I think that's a pretty
um
common assumption that like if there's a
yeah,
fairy tale world where all these stories are happening,
yeah.
it would actually be weird if there would be multiple big bad wolves
Yeah.
who were just like randomly blowing everybody's houses down and stealing everybody's, you know, lunch boxes. That's
Yeah.
feels like they're too territorial for their. That would be an interesting story though about if there were if it were two of them, like the territorial fight between
Yeah. That
like
that could be all right. Um I I'm hesitant to bring it up just because, like, there, you know, you can go, your mileage may vary. You can go read about the things that Neil Gaiman has been up to. Um, but he had one that was also really I think it's in, I forget where it's originally published, but it's in Trigger Warnings, his collection, which is called The Sleeper and the Spindle. And it ties together Snow White and Sleeping Beauty in a really interesting way, in that their kingdoms are um, right next to each other. And like there's only like this mountain range that is keeping the sleeping sickness from Sleeping Beauties from like crossing over. And it's told like with Snow White as the POV character. Um,
I just got Thornhedge, which is
yeah.
like the Kingfisher retelling of
Hmm.
Sleeping Beauty. That's really kind of along similar lines. That like
Yeah.
it's not about like keeping people out of the oh, that the hedge is there to protect you from Sleeping Beauty, not the other
Yeah.
way around.
Yeah.
Like,
Which I think is a um, really interesting idea. And and if it hadn't already been done, maybe that's the direction I would have gone in when I was doing mine. But so I always think that if you're doing this sort of work, it's like, and this is kind of going back to an older question, but like you have to thread the needle between reading them and accidentally absorbing somebody else's idea, um, and reading them and being aware of what has already been done so that you can kind of continue to put your own spin on it.
yeah. And like there's a certain thing to be said about like the collective unconscious and like
Hmm.
how I forget how many times like almost the exact same movie has come out.
Yeah,
Like
it does feel like a
Deep Impact and what was the other one? The
Armageddon.
Armageddon. Like they can't, and
Yeah,
it's like they unquestionably did not like it.
yeah,
Could it wasn't even possible that they were in one was aping the other. It just so happened that that was the year that an asteroid was definitely going to hit the Earth and destroy
yep,
itself.
yeah,
So
and just was it gonna be um oh gosh, I can't remember. I don't think most of the main characters um anyway, yeah, like who's going to save the world or who's going to not save the world, depending. Yeah, I went down a rabbit hole recently and started getting on YouTube all of the clips from that from Deep Impact. Just like it's like, oh, yep, show me this one. It started off because I was looking at the movie 2012, which is so bad it's good. Like it's at least I find it's like it is so like it's I want to believe it's self-aware. I want to believe that it's like a proto Sharknado, like it kind of knows what it is. And but then I'm like maybe it doesn't. I don't know. It's
Okay, I'm going to throw up one more question here
mm,
from Secondhand Samurai, which is I thought was very compelling because we were talking about comic books and we were
mhm.
talking about fairy tales. And Andy asks, are superhero stories fairy tales? And we were talking about the Avengers moment with the Disney princesses.
Yeah.
So, what do we think?
That's a really good Andy has great questions.
Always, yes, 100%.
Um I think the flip answer, like they are if you want them to be. Um, but yeah, I mean there is kind of an element of well, I think the earliest superhero tales are working off of sort of folklore or mythological sort of frameworks, right? There's uh you know what I'm wanting people to read? The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, by Michael Chabon, um, is uh, is a great retelling of the creation of Superman. That's not about the creation of Superman. It's these two Jewish cousins who create a character called the Escapist, and which has been turned into comics. So if you're like, I just want comics, go check out the Escapist. I feel like you'll get a feel for Cavalier and Clay. But yeah, they create this character who's kind of based on Harry Houdini and based on uh, uh, traditional Jewish mythology about golems and things like that. Um, I'm sure that Siegel and Schuster were thinking about sort of old folklore at some level when they were thinking about Superman. Um, the Marvel ones maybe less so. I don't know.
I have a gross oversimplification to this gross
Yes.
oversimplification answer to this question, which is that DC comic superheroes are myth retellings, and Marvel superheroes comics are fairy tale retellings.
Okay. I can. Yeah. So like Spider-Man is like he gets bit by something like that feels like that could be a straight out of a fairy tale.
I think Wonder Tales are like the base source for classic Marvel, like that came the Jim Lee, the Stan Lee. I love Jim Lee's art, but he did not
Yeah.
invent Spider-Man. The Stan Lee era forward of I I feel very strongly that those are in fact wonder tales in the same sense that like fairy tales are.
Yeah.
I think DC Comics, to your point, they're pulling more from mythology.
Right. I mean, then they're literally pulling from mythology with Wonder Woman. Like,
Oh
so
yes, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
James Marsden, I can never say his name correctly, but it's not the
Yeah.
actor who played Cyclops. It's the guy who
Yes.
their names are too similar. Is basically
Yeah.
what I'm coming down to. The guy
I'm
who
with you.
created, the guy who created Wonder Woman was absolutely pulling from Greek mythology. So
Yeah.
and even Batman is arguably Hades or a psychopomp like
Yeah. Yeah.
character. So that's
I like your theory. I dig it.
I'm
And
basing this on pure vibes, guys, but that's my theory.
I like Drunken Panda's answer in the chat. I know this because they are in the ECC World Anvil universe. Thank you, Drunken Panda. Yeah, I mean, I am certainly playing with I grew up reading superhero comics, and that is certainly like a factor in the Blood of Seven Queens is I'm yeah. I mean, there's a sequence I think in issue 4 that I was putting together the Kickstarter video, and I was like, oh, this is like really cinematic. I had forgotten about this sequence where Frida, the main character, is using the Cheshire Cat to teleport and to basically like beat up a whole bunch of people in a row, and like it is absolutely like a superhero. Like I'm sure I don't I remember I looked up for reference. I was looking up Nightcrawler and like things like that. Like, okay, who's a teleporting character who like hits somebody like 4 or 5 times? Yeah. Um so I'm definitely Drunken Panda is not far off the mark there.
That's great. So we're coming down to the end of the wire here. We're coming up to the top of the hour. Uh, Chris, I'd like to give you the opportunity to make your pitch for
Oh, thank you.
your Kickstarter and tell everybody about it and why they should support it and who it's for, really. So
Yeah. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about that. Hopefully I haven't spent too much of our conversation sidetracked talking about now I'm very self-conscious. But Blood of Seven Queens is a comic book that tells an ongoing series that tells the story of how Red Riding Hood becomes the Queen of Hearts. And in issue 6, which is up on the Kickstarter right now, we take a look at the backstory of the Big Bad Wolf. Um, and the what is it about him that in the very first issue we get a sense that he and Frida, who's our Red Riding Hood character, knew each other at some point in the past, and this is where we finally sort of see what that looks like. Uh, how did Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf go from being friends as kids to being enemies in the modern day? And how did the Big Bad Wolf come to be employed by the Wizard of Oz? That's um, the extra bonus there. Um, and so this is for folks who like fairy tale retellings, which hopefully is you if you're here for this stream,
100%.
and superhero comics. Certainly that factors in there. Um, it's I would it's as close to all ages as I'm ever going to get. It's probably more, especially one scene in issue 5, is it makes it more like young adult. Because I yeah. But yeah, so it's ongoing. I have no idea where it is funding wise right now. It my therapist and I talked about this. I've been obsessively checking the page, and she challenged me. She said, "Don't look at it all weekend." I was like, "Well, I've got this thing on Saturday." So I looked at it briefly this morning to send you information. Um, but it's got about 6, 7 days left, and you can get the entire series if you would like up to this point. Um, yeah, it's fun. It wouldn't exist without without World Anvil. To bring it back to like to this the product itself, but also like the people. I was a couple years ago, I lost my job and I was looking for something to sort of occupy my time. And a couple of folks, the immediate names that come to mind, and these are not the only names, but Katoy Poi and Hallie the Moonlight Bard were like, do the comic. Like you've been talking about doing the comic. So like I wouldn't have been able to come up with all of the lore and stuff without World Anvil, and I really probably wouldn't have done it without the two of them. So thank you guys and everyone else. So yeah, it's there's lots of it goes back to I looked it up earlier. And I know you guys can't see my screen. World Building Summer Camp 2021, a quote, a myth about a mountain, lake, cave, or other landmark, is probably the first place where the idea really started to crystallize. Because I wrote a thing called "The One About the Woods," which was basically this story for the length of a summer camp article.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple announcements before we break for the day. Adventure April is still ongoing. If you haven't participated in that and you want to, it is our latest community challenge that is where the challenge is to create a tabletop RPG adventure of your preferred length. You could do a one shot, you could do a longer adventure, you could do a full campaign if you're feeling froggy and you like have the time to dedicate to it. So there will be a standard league and a Premier League winner, and the winners will receive the Kobold's Guide to Game Design Volume 2. And also everybody's going to be judged by Janet Forbes, who's a professional RPG writer, who is the lead writer on the Dark Crystal tabletop RPG. Sorry, I'm choking a little bit at the end, right at the wire, got down to the wire and started to choke. Also, if you are not down to write a tabletop adventure, the rebel goal for that is to do the short story, which is an adventure, and you can use the prose template for that. You will get a participant badge for doing the rebel goal and doing a short story. You will not be eligible for judging for getting the winner's badge. Secondhand Samurai has dropped the link to the Adventure April in the chat, helpfully. Also, if you're just tapped out on ideas, if all of our discussions of fairy tales and adaptations and superheroes and things like that has not inspired you, what is wrong with you? But also, you could go back for a limited time only and check out the 4 sessions of this year's World Building Con Game Masters Edition. We had some amazing guests from the world of tabletop RPGs who worked through some worksheets step by step to give you a setting, a villain, a plot, and a dungeon for your adventure. So you can download the you can go to wanville.com/game master to sign up to get all of the worksheets and downloadables and stuff like that for a limited time. But those are going away. Those videos are going away for a while, and the worksheets are going away at the end of this challenge. So if you haven't had a chance, if you, for whatever reason, missed World Building Con because you were busy that weekend or whatever, go watch it now because it's gone soon. Also, last but not least, Chris was hyping our community, our World Anvil community, which is amazing. It's very supportive. It's like the friendliest community on the internet, especially for creatives and world builders and things like that. I'm continually just like brought to tears and shocked by how warm and thoughtful the community is. But Blue Fairy 74 is having a community challenge. So if the adventure is just wholly entirely not for you, she is sponsoring a community challenge on Chronicles for basically if you want to take the Chronicles feature for a test drive, which is our kind of combination of maps and timelines where you can kind of like see the map change as time goes on and things like that. That's going on right now as well. And there's always plenty of community challenges going on. On the dashboard, be sure to check the news feed for the hashtag community challenge. There's always something going on. So even if the current official challenges aren't for you, maybe one of the community challenges will be. So, and I think, oh my God, it's 5 minutes after. We're out of time. We have to let everybody loose so that they can go do whatever Easter shenanigans they need to be up to, hiding eggs, what have you. And thank you so much, Chris, for being here and spending this Saturday morning with us and talking about fairy tales and geeking out about them. And next week, Andy will be back to help wrap up or help inspire everybody with Adventure April. Keep the ball rolling on that. But I think that it is time to say the thing that we always say at the end, which is,
I don't have a hammer, but
I've got a mug. Okay,
this will work as a hammer.
You can. Like, if you're not functionally fixed, it can be a hammer. So grab your hammer and go world build, guys.